Let's bring in our political panel today. Matthew Bassett, a former Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Richard Fowler, a Fox News contributor and American radio show host. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good to see you, Mike.
Good morning, Mike.
All right, in battleground Wisconsin, the Fox poll has sitting Republican Senator Ron Johnson down 4 points to the Democratic challenger Barnes. What do you make of that, Richard?
Well, look, I think it says this. What we like to do in this country oftentimes is we like to skip chapters. And in this particular election, we need to slow it down a bit and go page by page, word by word, because this election has been absolutely fascinating. Republicans have decided to make the run on immigration and inflation. A recent NBC poll, the poll that Peter Doocy just talked about, found that the #1 issue to voters is threats to the democracy. Doesn't mean that Democrats are going to win both chambers. What it means is that the American voter is still making up their mind. And anybody out there making predictions about what's going to happen in this midterm elections forgets the fact that we're about 70 days left, and there's this race is still very, very, very dynamic in all the states across the country, which is why earlier this week, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said it's going to come down to candidate quality. And in many of the states where Democrats would not have had a chance, the reason why they will have a chance in this upcoming election is because the quality of the candidate is not as good as it used to be for the Republicans. Just take the state of Pennsylvania, where Mahmoud Oz is running, but he doesn't live in Pennsylvania. He actually lives in New Jersey.
Top issues there in Wisconsin: inflation, abortion, and election integrity. Matthew, how do you assess that race?
I think, like all races, Mike, I think the American people have seen disastrous policy over the last 2 years. And I don't think they're waiting to make up their mind. I think their minds are pretty much made up. I don't agree with downplaying Republicans' chances. I think Republicans are going to have historic pickups in the Congress, I think in excess of 50 seats. I do believe that we will win back the Senate. I don't think now is the time to lower expectations. The party in power has used that power to make the lives of everyday Americans demonstrably worse in every way, whether it's inflation, crime, or the border. I think people are licking their chops to vote in 78 days. And I think Republicans are going to have a good night on primary night.
All right,
on the election night.
To battleground Arizona, the Fox poll has Democratic Senator Mark Kelly up 8 over Republican Blake Masters. Even though inflation and immigration are the top issues there, Richard, how do you read that race?
Well, it's the same as I read the race previous. Here's the truth. If Republicans are deciding to run on inflation, which I think is a valuable argument, it was more valuable for them a couple months ago, but as inflation starts to go down, just like you mentioned in Wisconsin, just like we see happening in Arizona, for many Americans, for many American women, their abortion rights are getting worse. Their access to reproductive health is getting worse. So there's no voter. And Mike, we've been in this business a long time. There's no voter that goes to the poll and votes on one singular issue or two singular issues. Many of these voters look at their kitchen table. They think about all the things happening. They also look at Washington and realize Washington has got nothing. While Joe Biden has been legislatively successful, many of the issues that they're battling have not been fixed yet. So they're going to send people to Congress that will fix that, which is why you see both Mandela Barnes, Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, up, and you see former astronaut and husband to Gabby Giffords also up in that race, and both of those Republicans down. Okay. Because it's fluid. We're still fluid here.
You guys have teased it a bit, so let's play it. Here's Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell sounding a little concerned. We don't have it, so now I'm teasing it too. All right, so he's basically saying he's concerned about candidate quality in terms of winning back the Senate majority, thinks perhaps that some of the nominees may not be able to win in November. Matthew, finish off the point on that.
Well, let's go back to Arizona, Mike. The #1 issue for voters in Arizona is the border. We just eclipsed the mark of 2 million people entering our country illegally. We are on track for this year for 2.3. That's in addition to the 1.7 that entered our country illegally last year, with 1 million known gotaways. That is 5 million people. That is what is #1 in the minds of Arizona voters. So I think Senator Kelly is going to have a lot of problems.
All right. So then the wild card in all of this is, how does this Mar-a-Lago raid/document controversy play out in November? Richard?
A couple points there. I think we have to wait to see what's in this redacted probable cause warrant, which we'll likely get next week from the federal magistrate judge down in Florida, and we'll see how that plays with the voters. But I think if you look at these races, even in a world in which people think immigration is their #1 voting problem, what they don't want to see is buses moving to and from Texas to New York or to Washington, D.C. They actually want Washington, and representatives from all 50 states, to come up with a real, tangible solution. And that solution is, one, border security, but it also requires dealing with those folks who are living in this country in the shadows. How do we bring them out the shadows? How do we create a pathway to citizenship? How do we modernize our immigration system? Because the laws that were written there were written before the year I was born. All these things are what voters care about. So they don't want to see the political football anymore. They don't want to have a conversation about the border unless the candidates are willing to talk about real solutions on how to fix it, and not just the border, but the entirety of our immigration system, including the fact that a majority of folks come to this country illegally via visa overstays through our major airports.
Let me give Matthew a chance to respond. And Matthew, does Mar-a-Lago move the needle for Republicans?
I think it does. It was by all accounts, an overly broad and ridiculous search. I think we have a real problem with institutions losing credibility. We see it with the FBI, we see it with the CDC and the failed response to the pandemic, and I think that's a concern to all voters. I think that the raid of Mar-a-Lago clearly riled up the Republican base and Trump's base, and I think those people are very excited to have an opportunity to vote in just 78 days.
So, Matt, to follow up, you're predicting Republican House and Republican Senate?
Absolutely.
Richard?
Listen, I think we have to wait and see. And like Governor Sununu just said a couple moments ago prior to this segment, this is going to come down to candidate quality. This is going to come down to how voters turn out. Anybody making predictions today are neglecting the fact that these races are still very dynamic.
I think Richard's been in the business long enough to tease. Stay with us. All right. Richard Fowler, Matt Bassett, gentlemen, thanks very much.
Take care.